So hi there again, sweet ones. I will just continue because I just continue the second after I ended the previous one. I read from the Life's Philosophy, Reason and Feeling in a Deeper World by Arne Naess. When my friend asks how I feel the world, it is an intricate question. Does he mean my world or the wider world? I assume that it is a combination of the two. The short answer is that the world participates in that which I feel, and the other way about. I'm sorry, I'm just almost dropping my mouse here, so I will have to. That's why I wasn't concentrated when I read. Okay. The short answer is that the world participates in that which I feel and the other way about. The world and I are not that far apart, perhaps not even by so much as a millimeter. I have no very clear idea what are the limits of the self. Perhaps it flows out and expands or contracts within. It is never the same. It seems more like a flow than anything solid. Is the diversity of feelings that I register only within myself, as if in a kind of box? Is consciousness like some sort of a container with pictures of external things? That seems nonsensical to me, like an alienation of the world out there and a degradation of the greater flow of consciousness. This has gone on far too long, but perhaps it will give a picture of the infinite multiplicity of emotions that we have time to dwell on during our lives, and which we can leave undisturbed in its twisting and turning and disguises and playful fancies at Twerkestein. The varied expressions of emotional life. Is it difficult to express emotions? This peculiar question can be a good point of departure for reflection. In self-preservation, any strong culture will define a framework for what people ought to feel and how they ought to express their feelings, if at all. This often makes people avoid giving honest expression to their emotions. Whether we find the framework strict or mild, we must face the fact that for many people, suppressing emotions can lead to depression and other conditions that are anything but desirable. Clinical psychology and psychiatry reveal much of the difficulty that quite a number of people have in expressing their emotions. Words are not enough. For all I know, perhaps most of us have an emotional life just as complex as that of Franz Kafka, but almost none of us can put emotions and experiences into words like he did, even though we all have our own unique way of expressing ourselves. In different groups in society, there may be different conventions for which verbal expressions ought to be used for particular emotions. Many emotions are not in, others may be virtually prescribed. If one goes to psychoanalysis, I think you say it differently, psychoanalysis, I don't know. In its original form, one usually hears repeated exhortations of the following kind. Say precisely what occurs to you, and don't hide anything that you feel. In 1934, when I was undergoing psychoanalysis, I interpreted such exhortations as a cognitive theoretician and as an academic philosopher with analytical training. I was specially trained in what the French philosopher Henri Bergson calls, I can't speak French, I won't even say it, les dons immédiats de la conscience, or something like that, conventionally translated as the immediate data of consciousness. During the first few days, the analysis situation became more and more embarrassing. About 10 times more occurred to me than I managed to express, and at least 10 times as many different shades of feeling passed through my mind. The experience of analysis was complicated in itself, and while I was saying something, a voice within me was talking about the talk. 6 days a week for 14 months, I went for analysis to the experienced Freudian Edward Hitchman. How did he manage to interpret my flow of speech? Remarkably self-controlled. At the end of the first week, he announced, "I can say with certainty that you are not a schizophrenic." When we talk about our own and others' emotions, we usually have limited aims. We merely chat. To that extent, small talk is a good expression. I would guess that most people would regard with horror the possibility of everything they say in the course of a week being published in thick leather-bound tomes. It would be even worse if we included everything that passed through a person's head, not to mention all the emotions and thoughts. However, what is surprising is that a great deal in such an imaginary leather-bound volume would bear witness to the enormously rich imagination of mankind. For a few short moments, imagination rules in an admirable way, but without our even consciously observing it. Just as I was writing a few short moments, I stopped writing and looked slightly to my left. There was a little saucepan of water radiating good cheer. A spoon lying across the lid seemed for a moment like a broad, smiling mouth, but then turned into an independent object quickly on its way to the right. To me, the ability to analyze the experiences of the moment is a source of wonder at human creativity and approval of the result of evolution during hundreds of millions of years. That which happens within us, in our minds and hearts, is so complicated that the psychoanalytical instruction to express everything that occurs to one becomes quite simply an exhortation to do the impossible. The difficulties in expressing what we feel. Let us imagine that we are walking over a hilltop and enter a new landscape. At first, in less than a second, we may have a clear feeling, but before the second have passed, it has vanished. We might perhaps have expected to see something completely different, so we were presumably disappointed. The two ingredients were most discernible, the feelings of surprise and disappointment. But there were perhaps more components, relief, for example, that one had finally reached the top of the hill. We have all known occasions when we were seized by the moment, and the simple dimensions of time and space vanish. It is difficult to put such moments into words. Saint Augustine's little aside has become famous. If you ask me what is time, I am unable to say, but I know what time is. I am tempted to adapt to him. Ask me what I felt, and I am unable to say, but I know what it was. I remember an intense personal experience that concerns the relation between emotions and the consciousness of expressing those emotions. I was connected with French lessons in high school. I was generally miserable in school at the time. being interested in subjects other than those being taught. I'd choose classics because I believe that those be the easiest way to get through high school, but it turned out to be a mistake. I was completely uninterested. My aim was just about to pass my examinations, but there was always something in existence in which I was deeply interested, and then all subjects were completely irrelevant. I felt really sorry for my French teacher. He turned a blind eye to the fact that I was obviously learning practically nothing. It would have been his duty quite simply to fail me. Kind soul that he was, however, he disliked the thought and sent me to the headmaster to apprise me of the situation. Herr Roxeth amiably asked me if I would promise to pull myself together so that at least I would avoid failing. I thought for a few seconds before answering, not with a forthright yes, but with a forthright no. Whereupon the unforgettable happened. The headmaster reacted with the following words: "You agree with Luther that the way to hell is paved with good intentions?" I was completely speechless, but the headmaster rose sky high in my estimation. It was a fantastic, friendly interpretation of my uncompromising, impolite no. No more was said, at least that I can remember, but it annoys me. I almost feel tears in my eyes at the thought that I was not mature enough to say a few words, not just the bare negative no, but with a few words that expressed what I was really feeling. I ought to have said something like, "My French teacher has done all that he could to make me learn a little French. His patience and tolerance of my behavior has been amazing." And then I would have said to the headmaster, "And then you, sir, answered my no with a quotation from Luther was fantastic. Clearly you disagree with my opinion that one cannot promise anything in a world where anything may happen." That was the way that I myself felt, hence my answer to his question, but I could not bring myself to express something I would have liked to have said in addition to a mere no. Now it is too late. This example is a reminder of the difference between strong empathic emotions on the one hand and enduring, albeit not intense, feelings on the other. The distance at not being able to say what I ought to have said turned out to be enduring. It will last until I die. That experience of mine is also of some interest for the unintended inquiry into the relation between guilt and regret. Today there is perhaps a tendency to regret rather than feel guilty. Maybe we learn more about our possibilities. I could have done so and so. To what extent can we distinguish one emotion from another? No two people have had exactly the same emotions during a given interval of time. Emotions, thoughts, and sensations form an uncharted diversity that will always vary from one person to another, even in the course of a minute. In addition, new emotions are constantly arising. There is always something new under the sun. If we say that 1,000 children in a parade seem to have precisely the same feeling of joy, and 1,000 of children have also felt joy, but not of the same kind, what then do we consider the nature of the similarities and differences? It is perhaps even more difficult to give an answer if we are dealing with the feeling of boredom. If we believe that two people are precisely the same feeling of boredom, which symptoms particularly come to our notice, and precisely how is boredom experienced? Is a my cat is waking up. Okay. Is a multiplicity? No, I can't say that word. Is a multiplicity of emotional differences actually felt? independent of descriptions of people and situations. For instance, to take an example, I had to listen to him for a whole hour. I began to be bored. It's how you would feel now when I read also crappy kind of reading. I'm so sorry about that. But thanks anyway for sweet words about it. B, was that all you felt? A, no, I had a little cramp where I was sitting. In this case, A acknowledges that he experienced boredom, but if B had said, did you not feel anything? A might have answered, no. Oh, that's not quite true. My stern was a little sore. Perhaps we ought to consider boredom as a special feeling, or then again, perhaps not. My conclusion is that the diversity of feelings is immensely rich. Some would say that there are few that are really different. So which characteristics do we use in deciding that one feeling is different from another? An important question: are we to include no references to a particular situation or more general circumstances in which A and B are acting? On the contrary, in this case, it is essential to give a description of and references to the situation and context in which A and B are acting. The felt emotion may very well be the same but appear to be something quite different in another situation. The cat is staring at me. She wonders what I'm doing. To take an example, homesickness, the urge to travel, the longing for freedom, are these different feelings? Ought we not perhaps to admit that in this case we are dealing with what is fundamentally a single emotion, longing? And that there are many varieties of one and the same emotion. But is that to be understood? Varieties of an emotion must be emotions. They must be felt differently, or so one might think. But ordinary ways of talking do not consistently function in that way. In the way that I use sentences of the type X is a feeling that I have, must freely acknowledge that he who utters the sentence might be wrong. Thus, for a long time I thought that I was fond of Therese, but unfortunately I turned out to be wrong. And again, when I was in Nicaragua I felt very homesick, or so I thought, but when I returned home I grasped that I was really longing for something quite different, which was to see Christine. When you read fiction, you will come across many descriptions of the multifaceted phenomenon of longing and understand how subtle and polymorphous the field is. The multiformity of our emotional life is no illusion, but there is a strain in the philosophy of emotion which wants to limit this multiformity to a mere two basic feelings, namely pleasure and pain, a positive and a negative feeling, two feelings which admittedly vary in the intensity of their factual content. Such a reduction of the world of feelings can easily lead to undervaluing emotional life by comparison with the intellectual. Emotions, they are simply variants of desire and revulsion, and that is what we have in common with animals. One could say, acknowledgement of A is completely different from that of B. A textbook may contain 1,000 alleged declarations of differing certainty and range. In my view, there is good reason to trust everyday speech and that which it expresses. We meet the different circumstances of life with a rich variety of felt emotions. We can always try to group, classify, and arrange, but I believe that it is unlikely that one day a lineage of the emotions will be born, someone able to describe phyla, species, families, and orders of felt emotions in a wholly comprehensive and convincing manner. There is little to suggest, luckily one might say, that emotions allow themselves to be classified as variants, subspecies, species, and so on. And that it is unlikely that one day a lineage of the emotions will be born. Maybe I said likely. I hope I read unlikely. Anyway. There are many words about words. Among other things, this is due to the ambiguity of words, to the fact that they can be given a variety of different reasonable interpretations, even in serious research into passions, emotions, feelings, and moods. It is necessary to take into account that words that function satisfactorily or reasonably well in daily life give rise to fruitless discussion among savants if attention is not paid to the richness of meanings or usages of everyday words. By a clear and fairly unambiguous definition of the meaning of a word in a discussion, it is largely possible to avoid apparent agreement and disagreement that are only due to ambiguity. It is futile. I have not recalled that I have ever read this before, but I will keep reading, although this is quite, I don't know, maybe we come to something more interesting. Futile to ask who among the theoreticians in sociology and philosophy use certain words associated with emotional life correctly, and who are wrong in the sense of what the words really mean. For that reason, it is also futile to talk about words as if they were concepts. Rather, we may say of a word that it expresses a concept. I think this is in some ways very interesting, because also when it comes to the healing hangouts or solution focus, there is a saying or an idea that as a, let's say, therapist or communication partner or whatever, seller, as the one using this with the customer, let's say then, there is a saying that you should try to misunderstand in the most beneficial way possible for the person. So if you listen to someone talking about whatever it is they focus on or talk about, since we cannot ever really understand each other fully, no one can ever. That's the concept or the idea here. I think we can, because we are one, and I can feel from the inside of someone else, being a psychic and so on. But yeah, if we then stay with the whole idea of the solution focus, I think it's still sweet to try to misinterpret in the best way possible. So you don't think that you know, you just figure what is the best way to misunderstand. How can I best misunderstand this? It's like a wonderful way of seeing things, I think. Anyway. Rather we may say of a word that it expresses a concept. What then about words used in discussing emotional life? There are those who believe that when they use the word emotion, they are using it synonymously with passion. Others declare that they use passion only when applied to something that is clearly associated with the body, senses, and instincts. They say that deep professions of friendship based on passion can, for example, easily arise in a state of intoxication. A tendency to be friend or foe increases with alcohol intake, but such passions last only for a short time and do not have consequences for emotional life as they conceive it. In short, when asked about words characterizing the world of feelings, people have formulated many hypotheses. To have a feeling of friendship towards someone is something different from a feeling of passion, although occasionally some would characterize a friendship as passionate. Some will say that they use the words sensation and feeling synonymously, while others declare that they use sensation only if they can localize it physically, like toothache, for example. One has sensations in a particular place. Spiritual suffering also has analogous physical effects. But in the use of the expression sensation, it seems that there is little point in adding, but perhaps I am wrong. If I say that I have toothache, I might have to enter a correction after having been to the dentist. Unfortunately, it is the jaw. But in that case, some people might add that the sensation was the same. If John says, I have an unpleasant feeling that something might happen to us, he would undoubtedly be puzzled if we ask, where do you have that feeling? Or where do you have the feeling? In this case, the connection with place and anatomy is hardly relevant. But even if John says, I have an unpleasant sensation that, he may not consider it pertinent to be able to locate it. I lose myself when I will just go on all that. I should never start to read after I already talked for an hour, because then I get tired and I read even less well. But yeah, I want to come through the book. That's why I keep going, so I can send it to him. Anyway, emotion is a word that I personally do not use. Oh, he doesn't. It is often used as a synonym for feelings, but it is too obviously associated with intense feelings to be a close equivalent of what I mean by feelings. This association becomes more evident when we look more closely at the word emotional. Some people are said to be more emotional than others, the word often being used pejoratively, whatever that means. The same applies to the adjective sensitive, albeit to a lesser degree. Later in this book, I will investigate more closely what I characterize as extremely faint touches of feeling. In that context, the word emotion is hardly suitable. It is better adapted to feelings that are quite intense, feelings that move one. You say that you don't feel anything when you are sitting there, but I believe that now you have emotions as well. In this case, it is more appropriate to assert that the person is feeling something, albeit very faint, unnoticed by most people. A tone of feeling is present. It is rather like saying that after a sunset a red tone still remained on the horizon, or that an answer had a tone of reproach. Some people, on striking a key on the piano, can also hear the overtones clearly but faintly. Closely related to what I have been talking about is a question somewhat more doubtful or profound. Can we describe feelings themselves, and can we describe the differences? Or are we simply recognizing something without description, as if pointing to an object? I felt abandoned. Yes, I understand how you felt. Has the first speaker thereby described the sense of abandonment itself? We can hardly say so. We may describe a piece of apparatus that we have never had but wish to have. If we obtain it, we might perhaps put it on a table and examine it more closely, together with someone else. It is different in the case of feelings. Admittedly, there are articles and books that describe and characterize different kinds of pains, for example, gripe, or distension in the stomach. But perhaps we cannot describe a feeling that another creature has unless we ourselves have had such a feeling. It is difficult enough even if we have actually felt it. In a group to which I belonged as a teenager, we used to talk about something we called organ sensation. When we felt nothing, we might have detected a kind of faint positive message from our body, a message that could not be called a definite feeling and came from the body rather than from the spirit. Organ sensations occur when we are waiting for something, a bus, let us say, or something else that will soon come but is not awaited with any particular anticipation. We simply wait. But if we are in a situation where something is horrible or wonderful, it is quite simply impossible to sit and wait for a bus in that way. Some people often seem to have a sensation of impatience, a sensation of unrest that is negative, while others only have rather weak but positive sensation of simply existing, let us say, of just being. The point of view I wanted to clarify here is that the feelings we have when we are inclined to say that we don't feel anything characterize our positive or negative attitudes to life. It might mean, for example, either that one is suffering a mild form of depression or going round and feeling a faint degree of pleasure. The prevailing tone in emotional life and other tones. Let us examine more closely those situations in life where we consider nothing to be the appropriate answer when we are asked what we feel. In such cases, it may nonetheless be said that one does feel something, incredibly faint perhaps, but something nonetheless. I interpret this something as a weak prevailing tone in our emotional life, be it positive or negative, a prevailing emotional tone. It is a faint feeling, pleasant or less so. As an observer can see such a feeling when, for example, it results in a slight curling of the concerns of the mouth. No, not concerns, the corners, now I'm tired, corners of the mouth, either upward or downward. The longer students remain at the university, the more often one can see a tendency for corners of the mouth and the look in their eyes to be dragged down. This is really bad. Unquestionably, it is a result not of natural causes, as among older people, but quite simply of boredom and stress. To talk about happiness or despondency is to go too far. A prevailing tone in their emotional life, what I call the prevailing emotional tone, is something that underlies emotional life, something that is there for long periods, whether we are aware of it or not. I am referring to the sensation that one has when one does not feel anything quite distinctly. The faint negative alternative may be indicated not only by the word empty. God, I stumble on the word emptiness, but by a new expression. One has a feeling of being lived rather than living. Interesting. One carries on with a daily routine, but not choosing to do so with a clear positive or negative feeling. I'm sorry, now I don't want to sneeze, but I have a little bit of cold still. One becomes a kind of living automaton. The prevailing tone that colors one's life depends on circumstances. As a student, while within the university precincts, for example, one might have a faint negative prevailing tone, a minor key, as it were, while at home one's tone is faint positive, a major key, and a smile comes readily. I distinguish a prevailing emotional tone from an emotional tone that changes from moment to moment. There is a basic mood and a fluctuating one that changes from time to time. There is a basic mood and a fluctuating one that changes from time to time. The relation between prevailing tone and tone is similar to the relation between the layers of wax on the bottom of a ski. The prevailing tone is like the foundation waxing, and the tone like the succeeding layers of wax required by the particular snow conditions. It is the foundation wax that provides adhesion for the other waxes. In the same way, we can say that emotional life plays on an on an infinitely rich variation of emotional tones. But by and large, it is characterized by a single prevailing emotional tone, which may be good or not. I have my basic tone, I've noticed, is like pure happiness. I am like blissful. If nothing like disturbs that, let's say, I get back to that very quickly. And I can be happy for small things. I mean, really, really happy. It's not like I get a little bit up. I get really happy. But then again, things have happened that have made me feel quite bad, and I've been pushed. Like if I then would not, I don't mean victim. I'm not a victim. I think it have been a meaning to everything that happened. But sometimes I've been in quite situations that have been high pressure, you could say, for various reasons, and I can still dip down if I don't take care also to seek those things that feeds or nourish my happiness, because sometimes I focus a lot on troublesome things, which can, if it gets too much, it can really bring me down then. And then I get like super, well, I won't say like maybe black, but if I would use colors then, but I can really get low. I mean, almost hopelessly low. And I know it does go away. I've learned that it won't stay if I just at least protect myself a bit from worst harm, let's say. If harm keep coming at me, since I've been in like abusive situations and such, if it keeps happening all the time when I'm at that state, it's hard to find a way to feel better. But otherwise, I just often need space and to reconnect to myself and my spirit, maybe, or my inner, or I don't know, rebalance myself, and that happens by itself when I stop feeding myself with negative of some sort. So, and I really am happy to have that. I think we are wired differently, and I've heard there is science about that as well, that some people are like wired to more easily see things in a negative light, so they need to really train their brains to, or their it comes more natural for them in some way, and that must be tough, because I have this happiness always so close to the surface, and it's always there. It's like a childish happiness that I always carry. I see humor in almost everything that I see, and so I kind of have fun almost all the time. It doesn't have to be, I don't need much to feel that at all. And also my brain functions that way, so that in silly ways I can see situations or whatever like humorous. They might not at all be to others, but it depends, of course. If I'm very, sometimes I can be really angry or whatever. If I'm haven't slept well or have pain somewhere or whatever, I can feel differently, of course, but I think I have that more than others, and I'm really happy that I have it. Not more than everyone else, but more than many that I know. I don't know why. I think I'm just born with it. It's like small, but maybe it's also genetical a bit. I think my mom is also one of those persons that see everything. She's even more so than me. Once she poured hot water on her hands. She was, I don't know why, actually really hot. And she was going to pour tea for someone, and she was concentrating on someone else. And then she got burned. And then she said, "Oh, I was too cold in my hands anyway." I don't know. Yeah. But it went well. She put some butter or whatever on it, so it didn't harm her a lot. It was not that hot, so she totally was. Maybe she would have screamed then, I don't know. But she had this way of seeing small things. I think I've mentioned this also before, but it can be first snow, for example. Now is that time. Now we actually don't have snow, but we have 10 plus degrees Celsius. So it's very warm for the time. Usually it's colder, and oftentimes it's snow this time. But the first snow, I get always super happy when it comes. And small things, glittering of raindrops on a window, or things when you go out, seeing things in nature, like beauty. I can see that almost everywhere. And that's also, I don't take great picture or anything, but I'm a little bit fanatic to take pictures. Not that I show a lot of them to anyone. I just like to capture what I see, sort of, but it never... I should have a great camera so that I could really capture what I experience, that I see. On my phone, it doesn't really get that well, even if I try. But yeah, tiniest things can really, really lift me up. Small things, like even things at home, like cleaning space, or I don't know, things like that, and I'm suddenly in a super happy mood. It doesn't have to be even, actually nothing almost. Eating something that tastes good. And now I'm a food addict, so, but anyway, just anything. Small things make my brain brightens up. Yeah, and it takes a lot more to bring me down, but that happens though. And I think I am my worst enemy there, because I really can bombard myself with, I seek out stuff sometimes. I'm so interested in things in the world, and there is a lot going on in the world, and sometimes I really bombard myself with things that are horrific. All those children dying, and also the combination of feeling responsible for these refugees who drown every day. You hear about them, and we could go there, and they have the right to seek refuge, and we could go pick them up with planes or anything, so they didn't have to go that way and die. And I have the hardest time with the kids. It's horrible that grown-ups also die, but they still can decide whether or not they step into the boats. The children don't have that choice, and oh gosh, now I start to speak about that and get upset again, and all kinds of things. The people around here from Romania and so on, the poor ones who, I meet them every day, and I've become a little bit less sensitive, but it breaks my heart still. It really does. I try to give them something warm to have, if I have anything, and sometimes a little bit of money. I have decided a percentage that I give, because otherwise I would give everything. I need to force myself to have a limit there. But still, I know they sleep where it's cold in there, and I know that they don't have good access to showers or anything, and they are around. I meet them every day. I try to make sense of some things, or get clear about where I stand in certain situations, and to to find a standpoint that is built on some knowledge of some sort. And when I then seek information and watch documentaries or listen to news or whatever it is, programs of sorts, that can really, I can bombard myself way too much than I am able to deal with emotionally, and that is not good. That doesn't make anyone happy. So I have to also force myself to stop doing that. When I see that this is too heavy for me, then I have to change my focus so that I at least have good energy in myself, so that when I meet these people, those who beg or play on the streets from Romania and such, and Bulgaria, I don't know where they are from. Well, they are from various places, but many from Romania, I think. Then I can give them a true smile, or really, I can connect and give some, actually we share prana and energy, life energy as well, and I can bring some good energy field to them as well, that which I can't if I feel so weighed down, so I hardly have energy to look at them as I can feel sometimes. So, and the worst thing I think is that I feel we really are responsible, and I don't know how to deal with it. We can't shake it off, that these people don't have a choice, and what choice do we have, and what responsibility do we have towards others. And I'm glad I'm not a politician and so on, because I just shouldn't even have started talking about that. But my natural state is a very happy, blissful state, but I can really do my best to sometimes dim my light, if you would say, to kind of become blind to all the happiness and how good I actually do feel if I just let the other things wash past me, by me. But I've always been very curious, also when it comes to the spiritual things and so on. But I seek to understand constantly, and I also re-question myself all the time. When I have an opinion or a standpoint that I feel okay with for the moment, I still question it, and I like to do so. But it's sometimes I go too far. Anyway, well, let's see. Where was I now? Let us imagine that we are at an important but long drawn-out meeting. First, something interesting is said, then something banal. Now and then we laugh a little. At other times, we smother a yawn. I admire those people who have the ability to maintain a positive facial expression, albeit a faint one, during the periods when nothing seems to be happening. At moments such as these, others, perhaps most of us, feel impatient, restless, or otherwise very faintly negative. Well, on these occasions I can feel I don't have a lot of patience. I like to, if I don't feel free to choose the situations and so on, I can really, I think it shows very well what my opinions are. Anyway, if I interpret the circumstances correctly, although a few participants will have a positive prevailing sensory feeling, however long the meeting, most will have a negative one. Well, isn't that natural, and isn't that kind of good that we have such a good compass? I don't know. Well, anyway, by comparison to the prevailing emotional tone, which is long-lasting, individual emotional tones are short-lived. People often resort to the mountains or the sea in search of a positive emotional tone. This may be one of intense positive anticipation, but then something unexpected happens along the way. Perhaps the weather in the mountains is not as expected, and we are deprived of the chance of sunning ourselves. Instead, a crossword puzzle awaits us indoors. The emotional tone can change into something negative to disappointment, but the reverse may happen. Children who have been dreading a boring holiday might perhaps find new friends and discover that the stay in the mountains is the best thing that could possibly happen to them. It is relatively easy to change a particular emotional tone from negative to positive. It is far more difficult to change the prevailing emotional tone itself. A remark like the following is based on the prevailing tone. Since you moved here, you seem a little depressed. We must do something about it. The person thus addressed may have had paroxysms of laughter several times without making the remark less valid. In certain situations, it might happen that a particular emotional tone managed to change a prevailing tone. Perhaps one might meet someone attractive while waiting at a bus stop and fall in love. That produces an intense positive emotional tone and can change the negative prevailing tone. To what extent the intense feeling is transient or long-lived is difficult to say. There is no guarantee that in spite of its intensity, the infatuation will be long-lasting. Love and hatred can be particularly durable emotions. Thus, our emotional state is characterized both by a prevailing tone and a series of detached tones. For longer or shorter periods, people seem to have a settled positive or negative prevailing tone. The expression, "it is good to be alive," expresses a positive prevailing tone. Perhaps it is easier to express the prevailing tone when it is negative, as in the case of persistent worry or emptiness. In that case, the answer to the question, "What do you feel?" can be the same, nothing. Note that here I am not thinking of circumstances where in fact we are clearly thinking of a settled pain or a pleasure. "How are you?" can elicit the response, "Not so well." Then what's the matter? Nothing really. But the answer can also be, "Very well, thank you." The question, "How are you?" is rarely an invitation to probe deeply. The expression emotional tonality is only distantly related to tonality of speech, but in certain circumstances it is said of someone that he is speaking quite tonelessly. To take an example, I love to listen to those who do that actually. Sometimes I think it's relaxing, but maybe it depends how really. To take an example, John is telling James that a dear friend of both, who has long been mortally ill, is dead. The feeling of emptiness that can then arise can result in toneless speech, in emotional exhaustion. All strength of feeling seems to have vanished. When we set ourselves the task of surveying different feelings, it is useful to distinguish between their intensity on the one hand and their strength on the other. I think it is tempting to talk about the durability of feelings, their mutability, and permanence, combined with the capacity to assert themselves when several different feelings seem to compete in attracting one's attention and deciding one's course of action. The intensity of a feeling may be such that it continually demands attention. Less intense feelings can easily be neglected. A long, successful expedition, whether in the mountains or in life, requires invincible feelings of friendship and, in addition, a constant feeling for the mountains or the goal of the expedition. The deeper that positive or negative feelings are anchored in one's emotional life, the more they are attached to what I call durable feelings. I call an emotion durable in relation to circumstances in which it is put to the test. Illuminating examples. That's the 10th time that his left ski has loosened, but he is just as happy with the trip. Yeah, well, I wouldn't like it. Anyway, she has called him a shit every day now, but he is just as keen. It has been 45 years since he had an affair with someone else, but he is just as indignant as at the thought of what happened. It has been 45 years since she had an affair with someone else, but he is just as indignant at the thought of what happened. Yeah, those were durable feelings, yeah. And then next, little short thing to read. I think it will be lighter, the coming. This was a little bit, I don't know, not too fun maybe, but maybe someone could fall asleep. I like to read through it though, and I understand it better if I read it loud actually, although, or maybe not, I'm not sure actually. But anyway, I like to do it, so bear with me. Next is called Light and Dark Temperament. Yeah, I have forgotten almost all of this, so it's interesting to me to check it up again also. But I think it will lead to more interesting chapters also. Yeah, or at least maybe just drift off and don't listen to what I say or read. Well, and in time I will probably, hopefully, get better at reading, and maybe when I get the glasses even, I don't know. Well, thanks for listening and being with me now, and let's talk soon, and feel free to comment whatever you feel like. I would like to ask you that. I mean, really, feel free on my channels to express whatever you like. Thoughts, questions, just anything, really. I like to connect. I like to know where you are at, where your thoughts are. And in that sense, I'm quite I think I mentioned that now at the other channel as well, my latest video there, the extra card. I rambled along, and I regret it every time I do that. But I'm not like, I think I am fine-tuned, really. I can tune in. I can feel fine nuances of things, really. I can do that maybe more so than some. But at the same time, I don't like to express myself that way often. So you know, it's like I'm pretty not, what can you call it, like there is a word for it. Well, let's just say unrefined then. Some people may experience that as a flaw, or like being lesser evolved, sort of. But I think it's a choice in my, or like impatience maybe in my case. I choose to be blunt is the word. Sometimes I choose that because I don't have the interest or anything to be anything else. But I guess I should maybe I should train myself to be less blunt. Yeah, I don't know. I talk about myself so much, therefore also I would love to connect with you, and for even video responses if you would like, or anything, just write anything, or